All right. So I'm going to just say hello. I'm going to kind of be doing this. So if we're also streaming this. We decided like last minute to do it. There were people that needed the information, quite make it. So Casey, when you're on, what I need you to do is when people join, I need you to admit them. So you're the co-host. And then I just need to know from you if you can see the slide that is on the TV. Is that what you can see? Okay, wonderful. Is that it? Can you see anything else? Okay. I think we are ready to rock. All right, so for those of you here live, welcome. For those of you joining us on Zoom or on social media, Casey is our fabulous co-host, and she'll be fielding your questions. She'll be monitoring the chat. I'm going to answer questions at the end. So if you have any, please save those for the end. And then at the end of the workshop, if you are interested in notes, slide deck, resources, we'll tell you how to get that. So you don't have to take notes. Everything will be totally cool. So, Casey, if you can't see me, I'm gonna walk around. Is that accurate? You can't see me on the camera? Oh, you can see me on the camera. Okay, well, here we go. So, with the perfect storm was birthed out of this idea that there are families who are suffering because they don't know that there's anything that can be done with their situation. Now, if I talk about autism spectrum, or unrelated to tonight's talk, but Down syndrome or something, there are groups of people who have the mindset there's something wrong with those kids, and so extreme that they would say, you shouldn't even have those kids. Like, you know, there are genetic counselors who will say, your kid's gonna have Down syndrome. There's trisomy 21 when we did the genetic testing. You should just abort the fetus. You know, you should just kill the baby because it's not gonna be perfect. So that's not by any means what we're suggesting, obviously. But I say that as an extreme response because there are people who on the other side of it will say, I've offended parents before when I've said, hey, there's something we can do about your kiddo who's on the spectrum. And they say, how dare you suggest there's something wrong with my kid that needs to be fixed, right? Or your little guy that's acting up in class and they want to put on Ritalin or Adderall or, you know, whatever, there's something we could do about that. And they say, you're just as bad as those others, you know, don't. It doesn't have to be something bad that needs to be corrected. The question is, does it suggest that the body is working the way it is designed to work brilliantly, or is there something that's holding it up? And a further question would be, even if there are no symptoms at all, if there's a way to make our kiddos, our families function better, should we look at that? So wherever you are on this, it's perfectly okay. But my intention is never to suggest that there's something wrong or bad and needs to be cured. That's not the point. So the perfect storm is simply exploring a path of improvement of autism spectrum, ADHD, sensory processing disorders, and chronic illness in kids. Okay. So it doesn't have to just be a diagnosed condition. There is a foundation here in Michigan, which is super, I'm honored to be on the board of that group. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And you've all heard it, like, oh, I know it is, it's vaccines, right? You've heard that. You've heard autism or sensory things, or it's vaccines. And then you'll hear, no, it's not. And the only people that say that are losers, right? Or you'll hear, it's the food dyes, dang it. That's what it is, right? It's the food dyes. It's yellow number 20. If that's in your kid's system, he's gonna act crazy, right? And then other people say, well, you know, really what it is screen time. The more screen time they have, the more blue light that hits their brain, the more overstimulated they get with these dopamine hits. And now they don't know how to behave. And now they're acting crazy. And you should be a better parent, right? And the truth is, it's a combination of things. And it's a different combination with every kid, with every conditioned learning behavior, with every environmental circumstance that happens, with every history, with every future, with every family tree. Everybody's situation is different. So you could take that and say, well, crap, there's no hope. Or you could say, hey, this is beautiful. This guy's not up here saying there's one solution to a single factor problem, right? And that's what I hope that you take away. To the families that have exhausted every medical checkbox, that just fill out the forms and just check and check and check and check and check, right? To those families, it's not all the way done yet. If you're told that this is just the way it is, it's not true. It's not true. If we're still breathing, it's not true. You've been told you have to go gluten-free and casein-free and use oil diffusers. And no, never mind, that's not right. You've got to go paleo. No, keto. Actually, I think keto is the trick. Actually, these supplements are really good. CBD is great. THC, I don't know, maybe not, but try the CBD, try the supplements, try eliminating these dyes. We want what we share tonight to be the missing piece. That's what we want. Because everything I just told you, you've already heard, right? And I'm not suggesting those things don't help, right? But the idea is this really can be a perfect storm. So what is the perfect storm? Why are we calling this the perfect storm? Well, first of all, there are fertility issues that can occur. Did mom and or dad need to take any sort of medications to conceive? That changes the environment the baby's going to grow in. Were there pregnancy challenges, right? Was there intrauterine constraint that didn't allow baby to move around freely and grow and develop during those 40 weeks? Okay, that's a factor to making up this perfect storm. And then there's intervention or injury during labor and delivery. You know, once mom reaches contractions that are every 2 to 3 minutes, baby's head is, I mean, imagine me taking a baby and clunking its head full body weight down into the floor every 2 minutes, right? I mean, that's what contractions are doing that are trying to get baby to enter the world. And we're going to talk about each of these specifically. So, but the idea of labor and delivery being traumatic, massive. In fact, I have a whole talk called traumatic birth syndrome. It's now called delivered, but it used to be traumatic birth syndrome. Now we have a stressed, colicky baby, right? And it's an interesting pattern that we see over and over again. We have a stressed, colicky baby. Now we have a stressed, sick infant and toddler, a stressed mom, a stressed dad, stressed sibling, stressed home, and then sensory and spectrum stuck kiddo. They're stuck. How many times have you heard somebody tell you they are stuck? This is not my kid. My kid is in there, but he's stuck. It's not what we're used to. And so I work hardest at being a dad. I put on a cool front. I come here most days. I pretend I know what I'm doing once in a while. I lead worship at church. I do the radio show. But the hardest job I have, and the one that I have to work the hardest at, is being a dad. Because that's a limited amount of time. And so I've got 3 kids. They're awesome. There have been thousands of patients helped here. We have case studies, books, and binders of case studies and things that we've done. I can't stand how many sick kids there are. I mean, people want to know what gets me fired up, and it's not political. It's not anything. I cannot stand how many sick kids there are. I was one of them. My oldest son was one of them. He had undergone $16,000 worth of medical testing his first 2 days of life, and we were told he wasn't going to live. And all the tests could say was that there's something wrong. Nobody could say what it was. It was just that there was something wrong. And I'll let the cat out of the bag. It wasn't until he had his upper neck adjusted that his lab work normalized, and the neonatologist said, we don't really know how to explain this, but his lab work is normal. He's free to go home now. I can't stand how many sick kids there are. My motivation is not to take sickness or disease or diagnoses, but I don't want to take anything away, right? Everybody says we have to get rid of that. Let's get that out of your kid. Let's get that out of your family. That's actually not my intention. Mine is to add something to the world by adding health to these situations, right? We may not be able to take anything away, but we can certainly add health. And so if we've got this jar of muddy water, we may not be able to dump the jar out, but we certainly can add some clean water to it and keep adding it and keep adding it and keep adding it. It might not ever be perfect, but it certainly can clear up more than it is today, right? And so I want to add health to these kids. The family picture that I sometimes show here, my son Josiah and I were both perfect storm kids. Both of us were. And in fact, my son Noah was also a perfect storm kid that dealt with asthma, horrible allergies. And so we look at this and everything looks so different. Chiropractic care is the hidden gem here. And the problem, the thing that literally breaks my heart with this is we don't ever get that time back. So my son Josiah did better, but he couldn't lay on his stomach for more than 5 minutes without screaming until he was 6 months old. When we took him to Chicago and had specific upper cervical care done, and he laid on his stomach for 4 hours that night for the first time. Now, did that first 6 months of him not lying on his stomach change his life? Probably not, but that's just an indication that something else was going on, right? So not lying on his stomach may not have changed his life, but it didn't allow for him to have the proper curves in his spine. And so we've had to work a lot harder to get those curves in his spine, and they're still not all the way there, and he's 14. So everything matters. And so what breaks my heart is that they cannot get that time back. I was on 9 prescription medications through my adulthood, cancer survivor, and tons of medications, multiple surgeries. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I was able to get off those medications. I'm not going to get that time back. That's okay, but I don't want that for anybody else. And so we know that what we're currently doing, what we currently have is not working. We know that. Now, my position will never, it has never been and it will never be to throw anybody under the bus. I will also speak truth. So if the coach cannot win the game, it's time to replace the coach. Doesn't make the coach bad or evil or incompetent. There is no value proposition to how valuable that person is. But he shouldn't stay the coach if the team keeps losing. You follow? So pediatric chiropractic care needs to move forward because what we're doing is not working. So if we talk about the sports, when the general manager, coach, and players aren't working, they all get replaced. And that's not sad. Nobody cares. That's just the way it works. And everybody's okay with that, right? Swapping contracts, trading this guy for that guy. So in certain arenas that aren't even nearly a fraction of the importance of how healthy our families are, we're okay with swapping things out when they don't work. But when it comes to our families, we think that the way we've always done it, I keep getting muted. Okay. They changed the theme. They changed the strategy. They changed the colors, the uniforms, the name. They'll change anything they need to get something to work if it's not working. But we won't do that with the health of our kids. We just kind of stay in the same ineffective circle of options. If kids get more sick, if kids get more medicine, if kids have more surgery, does the problem get better at that point? Now, I'm not talking about trauma that requires intervention. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about a hole in a kid's heart that needs to be repaired. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm saying A child who is colicky, not latching on, not sleeping through the night, spitting up, breast milk or formula, or not keeping food down, or not. I'm talking about that kid who's not horrifically messed up, but just isn't the best he or she can be. Do we need to, are we going to solve the problem by more and more and more medications? It certainly begs the question. When people say that the incidence of autism, and autism is just kind of a buzzword. I'm actually talking about all things kiddo health, family health. When we were in school, when we were all, everybody that's here, I can't see who's online, but everybody that's here, when we were in school, how many kids do you remember having to go to the nurse for an inhaler, for medication, allergies? Just think back. Just how many do you think out of a classroom of 30, maybe? Is that fair? How many kids had to go to the nurse? 3 to 5. Okay. When you were in school or right now? Not your kids. I'm talking about you. When you were in elementary school. Okay, 3. What do you guys think? None? I had maybe 1, maybe 2. So small numbers is the point, right? But the statistics that are being discussed today are saying that people that this was all there before. It's not new. It was there before. It's just that we didn't recognize it. And so then I ask myself, and I ask you, I'd ask anybody online here, what has changed in 1 to 2 generations? Because it's certainly more than 1 or 2 or 3. It's certainly more than 0 to 3 kids now, right? And if their logic on that is true, then that means there were kids in our classrooms when we were in school that were toe walking, that were biting their skin, pulling their hair out. Now I'm talking more extreme on the autism spectrum, that were screeching, not making eye contact, right? I don't remember any of those kids being in my class when I was a student, right? Doesn't mean they weren't there, but it's not like it was there and we just didn't know what it was. Yet that's what we're being told. When in the 1980s, the incidence of autism was 1 in 450, and it was mostly boys. Now it's 1 in 81. What has happened in 1 to 2 generations? It's not genetics. We'll be told that, but genetics don't change that fast, right? So it begs the question, what is going on? And you know what medicine has to offer for this? They say it's bad luck, right? They might not use those words, but isn't the mindset kind of, well, sucks for you. I don't know what to tell you, but put them on this. But, oh, no, I know what we'll do. We'll cut that out. We'll take that out. We'll surgically remove that. We'll add this medication. We'll do, right? Isn't that, but it's not genetics. It's not that we're bad. So yeah, now it's 1 in 68. 1 in 42 with boys, and it's climbing by 30% or more every 2 years. 11% of kids in the United States now are diagnosed with ADHD. 9.3% of kids in the United States have asthma. That's 6.8 million kids. And they weren't like that when we were younger, is my point. There was the 1 or 2, I got it, right? But certainly not this many. 10 to 20% of kids have allergies today. How many rooms are nut-free now? Is it correct? That wasn't a thing where you can't even fly in an airplane and have nuts anymore. You can't have peanut butter anymore because somebody's allergic. Guys, what is going on, right? There's something in the water, maybe. 95% of kids have at least 1 ear infection by the age of 5. It's not working, okay? The best immune system is in the body. It's not in the lab. What I love about this slide is I made this. Everybody online, hear me here. Lab-generated, money-generated disease care systems are archaic. We've lost our way by having so much information. And I made this slide way before COVID. All right, so check this out. I want you to watch this video, and let's just see what happens here.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13.
Who got 13? 12,
But
13?
did you see the moonwalking bear?
Did anybody see the moonwalking bear? Hey, watch.
Go!
Watch it. Moonwalking bear. Look at that. See the moonwalking bear? No. It's easy to miss something you're not looking for. Okay? So, the awareness of this came from my own story. I was told I had learning disabilities. I was told it's a good thing you want to be a pastor because you're not going to be able to pass standardized tests. And then it became case history after case history after case history of, I had somebody, I just did the COVID shot webinar, if you saw it a couple weeks ago, and I had a lady say to me, well, she emailed her sister and said, this guy's a fraud or something. She was talking about me. She said, he's a fraud because he said that vaccines are linked to autism, and everybody knows that that's not true, is what she said. And so maybe he doesn't know how to read research, is what she said about me. Now, it's not true. So if you call me blonde, it doesn't bother me because I'm not blonde. And if you call me stupid, it doesn't bother me because I'm not stupid. And if you say I don't know how to read research, it doesn't bother me because I write research. So it doesn't bother me. It's okay. Take your ball and go home. It doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that people think that. That's what bothers me. Not about me, about the situation. And so my response was to the sister who said, my sister emailed me this, was Google whatever you want. It's bought and paid for, right? I have court cases in one of the binders here that the pediatric neurologist said that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine crossed the blood-brain barrier, causing brain damage in this child. A court case with expert witnesses saying, but that's not bought and paid for. And so with algorithms and stuff, if you Google vaccine and autisms, you'll get 20 pages of not true, not true, not true, not true, fake, fraud, quack, all this. You'll get all this stuff, but you can. It's just an algorithm. You can override that stuff. So don't go to Dr. Google for that. But what I said was, in 13 years and thousands of case histories, when mom said he was fine until his 18-month shots, he was verbal until his 18-month shots. She was fine until her 2-year shots. She was perfectly normal until, you hear that thousands of times. I don't care what the research says. Now that's not very scientific sounding of me, but I don't care what the research says. Who knows their own baby? You certainly know better than I do about your baby. And when you're telling me that he was fine until a 72-hour window of receiving, sometimes before even leaving the office, screeches, rages, all this kind of stuff. Now listen, vaccines are not the only thing, but it's part of the perfect storm, is what I'm saying. And so there's one specific ingredient. It leads to tantrums, outbursts, anxiety, and it keeps coming up. So even if the kiddo's not on the autism spectrum, but they've got ear infections, they're also talking about tantrums, outbursts, anxiety. If the kid is constipated, there's still tantrums, outbursts, anxiety. If the kid has teething trouble, tantrums, outbursts, anxiety, it keeps coming up over and over and over again because the storm snuck up on these families. They were just living life, doing the best they knew how to do, and they were told they were normal. They were told their kid was normal and that they would grow out of it. So nothing's done to change the situation. We're not changing the fertility side. We're not changing the intrauterine constraint. We're not changing the trauma during labor and delivery. We're not changing the fact that when I was a kid, we had 18 required vaccines based on the CDC guidelines and recommendations, including our first year in college. And now that number is 81, plus an annual flu shot, pneumonia shot, and mark my words, there will be a COVID shot that's probably required every year. And so the number keeps going up. Are we any healthier? Something to think about. So the kids are told they'll grow out of it, but it's not your fault if you didn't see the moonwalking bear. It's not your responsibility to know about the moonwalking bear. No one told you to look for it. You would have had a different experience had I said, guys, pay attention and look for the moonwalking bear. But instead, you were told to count how many passes the team in white made. Now, I don't believe for 1 second that any person that shares the title of doctor that I've ever met has ill intent. I absolutely believe with all my heart everybody's doing the best they know how. And the few that aren't even enough to count. But we miss 100% of what we're not looking for. And so I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm saying let's think about this differently. Because chiropractors think differently. Health is determined by our genes is what the current thinking is, right? I mean, if you just poll people and ask them in the news, health is determined by our genes. It's out of our control and it comes down to luck. It's kind of how we think as a society, right? And so there's this whole idea of the gene theory where everything is genetics. So it just, nothing matters, right? Like if I'm gonna die anyway, what's the point, right? But chiropractic thinking says, wait a minute, health is determined by our lifestyle and our environment, and most importantly, by our ability to adapt to it. That's actually what health is your ability to adapt to things. So the idea of, there's a concept called epigenetics, and it's fascinating work. And epi means around, and then genetics. So this is the study of things around that surround genetics. If genetics writes the ticket, then our choices mean nothing. But our choices do mean something. And if we behave as if it's all genetics, we're going to make really bad choices. So it's not all genetics, and it's not all our choices. So the study of epigenetics is what surrounds this idea of genetics. And the best metaphor I could give you is that genetics loads the gun. But our lifestyle, our choices, that's what pulls the trigger. So if I have a family history of cancer and heart disease and diabetes, maybe that bullet's in the gun. Do I throw my hands up and say, I'm going to eat a high sugar, high fat diet, I'm going to drink alcohol all the time, I'm going to smoke, I'm not going to exercise, I'm not going to get adjusted because my genes suck, right? Or am I going to be so crazy that I just don't live life and I'm living in fear and I'm working out 6 hours a day and never doing anything effective because I'm going to just change the fact that this is true? The idea is if genes load the gun, then it's our lifestyle that pulls the trigger. But it takes thousands of years for genes to change. What has changed, though, is our environment. So it hasn't been thousands of years since kids were going through these things. Biology says that the strongest survive, and our kids are faced with more stress, more toxins, and it's lowering their adaptability, their resilience, their nervous system, their immune system. They're hit heavier, they're hit more, they're hit earlier with this double-edged sword, and it's a recipe for sickness, disease, the whole gamut. And US has amazing crisis care. We have the best crisis care in the world. We are so blessed. But most families are relying on crisis care and their pediatrician, who's a disease care expert, for their family's health. There's nothing wrong with crisis care. There's nothing wrong with a pediatrician. But why are we relying on sick care, crisis care experts to maximize the health and expression of our family. It's not the same thing. And so the more that we see healthy doctors, the less we see the sick doctors. And if we stick on the path we're on, we're simply going to get the same results. So the point is, if we want more health, each family needs to have a doctor, at least one, who's an expert in health. It's not all about surrounding yourself with sickness experts. So scientific help. The function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the behavior of all the other cells. Dr. Bruce Lipton, molecular biologist, used to teach at Harvard Medical School and said, I'm out. I can't keep teaching this stuff because it's not true. So the key to health is better adaptability and resilience. That is the foundation. I know that's not exciting. It's kind of boring. It's late. What the heck is this all about? But if we want to be healthier, can we control what's happening politically? Can we control what's happening with the CDC and the World Health Organization? Can we control what's happening with Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca and travel passports and restrictions and face masks and at home versus in-person school and virtual versus in homeschool versus crap, I never wanted to do this, but I don't have any other choice because you won't keep the mask on. So no, we don't have any control over what's happening around us. We talk about it a lot. We post about it a lot, but we don't have any control over that. What we have control over is how well are the people that I love the most going to be able to adapt whenever crap hits the fan. Because it is now, it'll stop for a while, it'll happen again. So if we can't control that, we can run around in fear all the time, or we can say, let's take control of what we can control. And what we can control is how we're working on making our body adapt. Subluxation is the chiropractic word for stress. It's stuck on. Okay, so sub means less than, luxation means dislocation. And in the spine, a subluxation means that the spine is affecting the sensory processing portion. It's affecting the nervous system. That leads to sensory processing problems. And perception is key. That's why the tags bug the kids, the sensory kids. That's why you can't touch the sensory kids. That's why it's too loud for the sensory kids. That's why the lights have to be up in the theater and the headphones have to be on. That's why the dinner out at the restaurant back in the old days when we were allowed to go out to eat, we'd sit at the restaurant and there would be a family enjoying a meal, and then over here would be a couple on a date and they're each on their cell phone, and over here would be the kids, the adults talking and the kids on their iPads with their headphones in. The perception problem in the nervous system is actually what is really going on with this. And so what happens is we've got all of these factors at play. So I don't know if it looks like my picture's in the way. Anyway, dyskinesia, all right, it'll be fast, but dyskinesia means misalignment and fixation. So the spine gets stuck. Motor movement delays show up. When baby's not developing properly, motor movement delays will show up. Let me see. I think I can move this. You guys are a gem. Then I can move this way down here. Beautiful. So there are delays. We know that when there are motor delays, that increases the likelihood of neurobrain development issues. We know that as plain as we know our name. So at home, if you're watching here, if there are motor delays, if there are movement delays, my gosh, get your kid checked like tonight, okay? Movement connects and changes brain development. So when kids aren't moving much, like if they're stuck in utero, then if they're stuck in a car seat, then if they're not able to go out and develop, then if as they're toddlers, they're sitting stationary all the time, you know, gaming and things, movement is what connects and changes the brain development. Then motor development is a bottom-up, back-forward process. So babies kick their legs first, right? And so motor development comes this way, and then it comes back to forward. And so first they'll hold their head up because it's developing, the back side is developing. then they'll sit up, then they'll roll over, then they'll crawl. That's normal development. And then they'll deal with gravity altogether. They'll stand upright. That's unique to humans. But you get a misalignment up here and then stand upright, that really starts to cause trouble. And the more years we're upright with misalignments up here, the more the nervous system is not working. And so we can do that because the motor stimulation, the development, the function, it all has to do with brain development. That's how the whole thing is designed. And if there's a motor delay, like dyskinesia, things aren't moving properly, by a misalignment and fixation in the structure that controls every nerve in the body, then the brain is not developing properly. So the key to this is not necessarily brain exercises, it's actually adding movement. Does anybody know any type of healthcare that would move a child's spine? See how simple this is? Literally, chiropractic adjustments, even if they're not the right ones. I mean, it's crazy to say that, but even if there's decently proper movement into the spine, early in life will develop the brain so much better. It's remarkable. Then, oh man, my remote's acting up. Okay, now, in the 70s and 80s, look at this chart. In the 70s and 80s, well, that's not on the chart yet, but C-sections were very rare. Then, as we look into the 90s, the birth intervention quadrupled the rate of C-section rates. Look at how that C-section rate totally went up. This is just from 2007. This was from an article called Too Posh to Push. And it was where this trend is moms are wanting to do that. But people say, well, no, my kid's fine because he was born or she was born with cesarean section. But when we look at traumatic birth, look at how, this is a cesarean section, a photo of it. When we look at traumatic birth syndrome, there are 3 parts to this subluxation. First, there's misalignment, then things are stuck. There's fixation, and then there's neurological interference. And it happens in that order. So first there's a misalignment. What happened? Is something wrong? Oh no, it's good. I just had clicked off it. Thank you, Devin. Devin saves the day. I had clicked to move my picture is what happened. So anyway, so most kids are subluxated at birth. We've got this misalignment factor, 140 pounds of pull on average is what happens to a baby's head. Then to protect itself, the spine it fixates, it locks down, it gets stuck. This is why baby can't turn one way, right? You hear moms saying, well, he latched on the left, but not the right. Or he couldn't fully turn his head. Or he got skull cap because I don't know, they don't know why. Well, it's because he's not moving enough. Or in the crib, they say don't stomach sleep, but don't do this, but don't do this. But his head is so flat from being in the crib because he's stuck. He can't move the way he needs to move, or she can't move the way she needs to move. And then it leads to neurological interference. So here's what's crazy. Imagine that a door is misaligned at its hinges. Have you ever opened or closed a door that's misaligned at its hinges? It's jammed, it's twisted, it gets stuck, it gets stiff, it's not moving how it needs to. It's such a bigger deal with our spines. And then the third part, the most important part here, is that chiropractic is simple. The body, the nervous system, the physiology of it. If you think about the skull and spine protecting the nervous system, and now they're not even doing their job because they're stuck and the nervous system isn't being protected, the spine is actually a conduit. So if a baby is sitting in a car seat and I walk over and I maneuver this baby out with enough force to lift a 140-pound weight, Steve would tackle me. He'd never let that happen. He doesn't even know who the kid is. You'd throw me out of your home if I did that to your baby or your grandbaby, right? So everyone knows that the head, neck, and skull need to be protected. Why? Because it protects other stuff. That's why we wear helmets on motorcycles. That's why, we are already doing a lot of the right stuff. That's why in martial arts we wear helmets. That's why in football we wear helmets. That's why in rugby we wear helmets. We know that the things that protect need to be protected. right? We wear goggles over our eyes because our eyes, our eyelids protect our eyes, but if they're open, they're not there. We have to protect things. We already know that. And so in the late 70s, 5 to 15% of kids were born with C-section. In the last generation, that's quadrupled. Now it's 30 to 40%. Throw medications on top of that, throw long labor on top of that, add some forceps, add some vacuums, add some axial traction. It's no wonder that this stuff is happening. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, let's see. And I don't actually know if this video is going to work. I'm not there it is. Okay, watch. So this is don't watch if this is sensitive to you. This is a cesarean section, a video of a cesarean section. So they're suctioning, they're moving stuff around, making a way for baby. Okay, so all right, got it. That's a suction. That's suction on the baby's head, and they're cranking it. No big deal. Just a day in the life. Cranking it. Keep cranking it. Okay. Okay. So heads out. Now watch this. Watch this. Boom, boom, back and forth. There we go. Yay! And nobody's paying attention. Now, I'm not faulting anybody. I mean, we got to get baby out. So I'm not saying I have no comment about that. We had to learn how, but I don't deliver babies. So I have no comment about that. My comment is, as soon as you leave there, you come here. There's nothing we can do about that. But there's something we can do about what just happened, right? And so I'm not going to change a system, but look at this. Early signs of subluxation. Look at how the baby's tiny neck is being twisted. Well, early signs are colic, difficulty nursing, reflux, constipation, torticollis, where the neck is stuck, the head is pulled to one side, plagiocephaly, where the head is misshaped, and ear infections. It's a big deal. When we look here, 99 out of 100 infants had at least one pattern of subluxation. 99 out of 100 had at least one pattern. Subluxation shuts down the gut, and kiddos can't get rid of the toxins. Birth trauma creates this subluxation. We find sympathetic tone that is stuck in the upper neck. Sympathetic tone means fight or flight. And so now, remember, it's stuck, it's not moving, it's switched on, it doesn't calm down. Well, it's colic, she'll grow out of it. He'll grow out of it. Constipation, grow out of it. Ear trouble, let's just do surgery. Tonsillitis all the time, let's just do more surgery. Let's just do some more antibiotics. Oh, it's time for their next round of shots. It's time for the next round of shots again. Now it's time. And so it keeps building and building and building and building and building. And it takes stress. The nervous system takes stress, and it takes interference. And maybe mom and dad are arguing. Maybe mom or dad lost their job during COVID. Maybe brother's acting up. Maybe there's power lines around the house that are affecting things. Maybe we're not eating as well as we need to, right? It all matters. Maybe we fell 5,000 times learning to walk. So it's affecting babies' nervous systems. Dr. David Yashin, he's an MD, he's a pediatric neurologist. He says that 10% of neonatal deaths disclosed evidence of spinal cord injury. So here's what this means. Take 100 babies and they're born, and neonatal deaths mean they're like a stillborn, okay? So this study that Dr. Yashin did, he took stillborns, and 1 in 10 of those stillborns had spinal cord injury. So that's really sad, but 10% kind of sounds like a small number until we look that, wait a minute, 10% of all neonatal deaths showed evidence of spinal cord injury. That's a different story. Then, if they didn't die, that sounds morbid, but if the baby didn't die, now baby's alive with immobilized joints, and that leads to permanent scar tissue within 7 to 14 days. This is according to Dr. Tapio Vitamin. He's an MD. He was from Helsinki, Finland. And so he says when a joint doesn't move properly, if it's immobilized, within 7 to 14 days, scar tissue becomes permanently embedded at that joint. That's what leads to degeneration and arthritis in the spine, by the way. Now this is crazy. Dr. Abraham Taubin, he's an MD at Boston University School of Medicine, did autopsies on babies that died of sudden infant death. They set the criteria for what would be considered spinal cord compression and damage in the upper neck at the level of the brainstem, where the brainstem and spinal cord meet. And 7 out of 8 babies that died of sudden infant death had this spinal cord compression and brainstem and upper neck damage. 7 out of 8. That is such a freaky, staggering number. And the implication of this is heartbreaking. Because if 7 out of 8 babies that died of sudden infant death had spinal cord compression at the top of their neck, and we can check for that, and we can correct that, and we can remove that, I'm not going to finish the sentence. But that's a really, really, really good reason for babies to get checked. The 8th in the study had spinal cord compression and brainstem and upper neck damage, but just below the threshold agreed upon for the research. So there was damage, just not enough to count for the study. That's very, very compelling. Dr. Godfrey Gutman, I have a hard time with his name, Boston University School of Medicine, said torticollis, when the head is leaning to the side, plagiocephaly, that's a brainstem component. And this is his quote. He said, surveillance of infants should involve observations, motor development, and control of the atlanto-occipital joints, the upper neck joints. This should be obligatory in difficult births, especially those with congenital torticollis. When babies are born and their head is pulled off to the side, they'll send them for PT, and then if that doesn't work, they'll cut the muscle here. So, oh, there we go, we got it. Now the head's not leaning anymore. And they're not even checking the upper neck. The success of this care eclipses every other attempt at treatment. That's what Dr. Gutman said. Earlier is better. The prospects are thus significantly improved, and the costs are substantially reduced. Of course, it's easier when they're younger. 80% of the kids that he studied had damage in the upper neck. And here's the deal. He's not trained to look for subluxation. And he still found that 80% had damage. That's fascinating. I love this guy because he's telling the truth. 120 pounds is enough force to decapitate a human. That's what kills somebody when they die from hanging. The rope around their neck, they don't choke. When they drop the body weight, it basically decapitates. It doesn't take their head off. It just separates the head. 90 pounds is enough to decerebrate, meaning enough to separate the cerebrum of the brain from the brainstem. That would lead to a stillbirth for sure. This is probably far from being what most obstetricians would regard a great force. So that's pretty normal. Dr. Larry Webster, the grandfather of chiropractic pediatrics, said that in his studies, he found that babies were having 140 pounds of pull on their neck. Now think about this for a minute. This tiny baby, we are designed perfectly, and our upper neck twists and turns just enough that we can stretch without any damage a half an inch. So we can stabilize, pull a half an inch, and that won't cause any nervous system damage. 140 pounds of pull will stretch that same neural structure, that area in the upper neck, 2.25 inches. So it's allowed to stretch a half an inch, but that amount stretches 2.25. Now, if the baby can handle it, we might just see colic and ear infections. If the baby can't handle it, we might experience another episode of sudden infant death. If the baby really can't handle it, heart rate's fine, mom's not preeclamptic, everything's normal, everything's good, heartbeat is good, baby's dead. A stillborn, that's what we're suggesting, not we, but what research is suggesting is happening neurologically. Then disafferentation, where there's abnormal sensory input. Nociception, think about this. I know it's nerdy, but I need you to get the science on this because it will really make a difference in your family's future. Is that nociception, input, it leads to noisy brains. These kids have super noisy brains, right? Are you listening to me, right? No, they're not, because their brain is just so noisy. There's so much input. Have you ever put your thumb over a hose? It increases the flow that's going everywhere. So now we've got this neurological storm and the sensory perception. The brain is 99.99% on autopilot. You don't have to think about your heart beating, your lungs. You don't have to think about that. But the sensory system runs on our autonomic nervous system. And so that's, again, where the tags start to bother the kids. It's just too much. And then we get dysautonomia. This is the crazy part. The central nervous system imbalance. There's growth, there's survival. There's gas pedal, there's brake. And these kids are stuck with their nervous system on the gas pedal. And when you're told they'll outgrow it, what happens is they become basically just like a raging bull. So dyskinesis, the last big word, the last D word, it's abnormal energy output. So now you've got these raging bulls who can't be contained. They've got these noisy brains, sensory input. I just need something to keep me focused. So I need a fidget spinner. I need to touch stuff. I need to move. I can't do it. I can't sit still. Get these tags off me. I might fight with some kids because I'm bored, but I'm like maxed out, but I'm bored, and I'm this raging bull, and I can't figure out what to do, and now I'm exhausted. And if I sit still, I'm gonna crash. I'm gonna fall asleep. So you're not gonna see me sitting still. If I'm gaming, I'll be stimulated enough to not fall asleep. But if I'm not gaming, you tell me to sit still in church, I don't know about that. You tell me to sit still in class, I don't know about that, because there's this abnormal energy output. And so we've got this gas versus brake scenario. We've got the gut-brain connection, but it's not as important as the brain-gut connection. So many parents are focusing on the gut, right? The food and the gluten and that's fine. But nobody else is telling them about the brain-gut connection. That's the part that really needs to be addressed. And so now we deal with neuroimmunity. 80% of kiddos with ADHD or sensory problems have allergy, asthma, eczema, constipation, reflux, colic, chronic ear infections, and they're on a ton of antibiotics. They're all tied together. It's not like these kids have 14 things going on. It's that we're continuing down, the marble keeps running down the same track. And it just, and the snowball keeps getting bigger. And so there are two modes of operation in the nervous system. There's the gas pedal, and then there's the protective side. One is to get me going, the protective side. The goal is not to calm down the kid, because the gas pedal protects us. Like if a bear is chasing us, we better be able to hit the gas. So the idea of turn that down is super dangerous. Like, why do we want to turn those protective mechanisms down? Well, because your kid's rowdy and interrupting my class. Okay, and I don't want you to have a disrupted class. I get that, but we don't want to take a protective mechanism in the body and turn it down. Like we don't want to take the helmet off and tell them to go on the motorcycle ride. Like we cannot turn down the protective mechanisms and get away with it very long. So instead, we want to stimulate the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. We want to stimulate the brake side of the nervous system. That's where perception is in the nervous system. That's where coordination is handled. That's where relaxation comes from. That's where connection comes from. That's where regulation comes from. So if we leave these kiddos with the pressure on, the gas pedal slammed to the floor, and all we're trying to do is take the gas pedal off, now we've got zombied kiddos who have a weak immune system, who have no perception of what's going on, who are horribly coordinated and clumsy and falling and tripping, who can't relax. Now they can be artificially zombied out, but they can't relax neurologically. They can't calm down. Then there's no, try to connect with that kid. Try to snuggle with that kid. Right? Leave me alone, don't touch me. It's too much. They don't say it's too much, but you can feel it, can't you? It's too much, get off me. Don't touch me, don't hold me down. Try to connect with that kid. Let's have a heart conversation, let's chat. It doesn't go as well. And it's not because they're preteens, it's not because they're teenagers, it's not because they're hormonal, it's not because they're stuck on social media. It's because we don't allow the body to work the way it was designed to work. And then the regulation gets crazy. So we've got these kids with Ferrari brains in this sensory storm, these Ferrari brains, but bicycle brakes. They're so stuck because their entire existence, their nervous system has been told, you better fight to survive. Because you're gonna get injected, you're gonna get pulled around and pushed around and squeezed around, and you're gonna have all these stressors. And so just wait for the next shoe to drop. Look at the red arrow. This kiddo had a total energy of 591 microvolts of electricity on this scan we did. That number should be 100. 100 is what that should be. This kid had a total energy of 591, totally worn out. So step one is we would do scans. Even at rest, this kid feels like they're at a Metallica concert. Just tons of input. Now this proprioception, this perception of movement, 60% of the brain's signals about our movement come from our spine, and 33% of that comes from the upper neck. So kids know where they are in space. Well, everybody does. Mostly from the upper neck. And when there's upper neck trouble, you have a clumsy kiddo. You have a clumsy kiddo, we got to look at this. This is why pediatric chiropractic, why upper cervical pediatric care needs to join your team. Roger Sperry says 90% of these signals deal with gravity. And we're not escaping gravity. So we're always on, we have to be. The brain is always on. The cerebellum is 20% of the brain size, but has 80% of the neurons. And its most important job is sorting and warehousing. Where's this going? Wait, that's gotta go there, that's gotta go there, right? It's like this logistic system. And perception, coordination, integration, processing, that's where it all happens. And that's where the problem is with birth trauma, is right there. That's why these kiddos aren't sorting information well. They're not recalling information well. They're not warehousing and storing it properly. They don't have perception of what's going on around them. They're uncoordinated. They're not integrated into what's going on, and they can't process what's happening. That's all. You can't be in growth and protection at the same time. So here's what happens. Have you ever, okay, you guys okay? I know it's heavy. I know it's kind of, you all right? You wait? Okay. Need coffee, jumping jacks? You all right? Okay. So there's hope. I mean, I know I'm beating this thing up, but there's hope, and that's what I want to share with you. So think about two different families, and think about one kid being born into a family whose parents are fully committed and fully invested, and they eat meals together every night, and they go on walks together, and they vacation together, and they, just, it's amazing. You just think about like how wonderful this is and what their relationship is like. And as this kiddo grows, he or she will learn to process things and respond to things and handle things and interact with people and have a good conversation and shake somebody's hand and talk to them face to face, maybe not just text, and you just see this like flourishing that happens. And then there's this other family, and maybe there's some bad luck involved. Maybe there's a lost job, or maybe there's an addiction, or maybe there's some choices that are made. And now mom and dad are splitting up. They're no longer going to stay together. And kiddos got to go this house, and then this house, and then that house. Will both of those kids, everything else the same? Maybe they go to the same school. Maybe they go to the same church. Maybe they live in the same zip code, okay? So all things else the same, do you think those kids would be at the same emotional age by the time they're at 15? No. And then 20? No. And the gap keeps widening. Now, that's not a judgment call on anybody. But the same is true when a baby is brought into this world with an excessive amount of force in the upper neck, and then given injections, and then given antibiotics, and then having surgeries, and then, the perfect storm scenario. And so the brain gets stuck wherever it is. And that's why it's this uphill climb all the time, because the brain is actually at a lesser age than the rest of the body, because there hasn't been enough input from the spine moving into the brain. And even if they're not getting adjusted all the time, this is still stuck. So no matter how much movement there is, the brain's not getting all the signals. And so the brain is developing much more slowly than the rest of the body. Really, really interesting. So this is Scientific American. They talked about bioelectric medicine, where they're going to start surgically introducing things to stimulate the nervous system. And we said, it's about time you guys caught up with us. We've been stimulating the nervous system for, since 1895, and I'm glad you're catching on. So we can help the nervous system process better info. If you want to know what you really need to be looking for, you need to have a way that your nervous system and your kiddo's nervous system and everybody's nervous system to process better information. That's really the whole point of what I'm talking about. And so these are the 5 most common responses. Number one thing we hear from kids. Casey, can you hear me? We track this in our statistics software. True? We track re-exam findings. Okay? So the number one thing we hear with kids is, my kiddo is more calm. If we stop there, that would be a win. But we don't stop there. My kiddo has more control of his or her emotions. Then we hear, it's the weirdest thing, we're able to connect better. It's really cool. We hear that coordination is better. We hear that communication is better. And I'm okay with every bit of those. All right, here's some real stories. This is Nate. This is my buddy right here. He's 13, maybe 14. He came in when he was younger. Mom adopted him. He was born to a mother addicted to, I believe, cocaine, but some sort of addiction. When he was born, he was dropped on his head and had some significant neurological impairment since then. He was getting biofeedback. Mom is just so committed, and he was referred here, and it's been a few years. He started care in October of the year that he started, and by December, he was in their school. I call it the Christmas musical. The public schools call it the holiday musical, but it was a Christmas musical, and he was on the risers, and Mom showed me the video of Nate just singing and clapping. Now, he is on the autism spectrum, and this is a big deal to me because we love everybody. It also doesn't escape me that Nate is a Black young man. And take a Black young man who's bigger, who looks normal, especially at night, maybe in a black hoodie, and maybe Nate's walking down the road, and maybe Nate's frustrated, Or maybe Nate is having a good time with his friends and maybe they're pushing each other around. But who knows what's going to be required of Nate to perceive his environment. And who knows if a well-meaning officer comes up behind him and tells him to stop. But he doesn't listen. And Nate's a big guy, you know, he's going to be bigger when he's 18. And so what if Nate appears defiant because he's on the autism spectrum and maybe just isn't taking commands and just doesn't really know what this guy's about. And so maybe this guy gets a little closer to Nate. Now Nate feels scared and threatened. And so now Nate's trying to protect himself, but the police officer doesn't see Nate wearing a shirt that says, "Back the heck off, I'm on the autism spectrum." And so the police officer aggressively brings Nate down or tases him or worse, right? So it's not just about when they're little and growing and developing. It's about what does the rest of Nate's life look like? Well, Mom commented just a couple weeks ago that they didn't used to grade Nate's homework because it's Nate. And so why would they grade his work? You know? Well, then they started grading it because they noticed some improvement. And what I love is that the psychiatrist was asking what Mom is doing differently. I love that question. Because if nobody's saying and you're observing it, that's really cool to me. And actually started to cut some of his medicine down, which I think is amazing. And so then they started grading Nate's papers, and he was scoring D's and C's on his papers, on his assignments. And now he's scoring B's and A's on his assignment. This was just for Mom. We were trying to link up a video thing to do it. It was an amazing story. The other day, last week, Mom took Nate to the grocery store. Oh, Nate can ride the bus now. So he's able to ride the bus. He's interacting with other kids. Everything is going brilliantly well. That is major progress. Is Nate completely fully functional? Nope, there still is some neurological deficit there, but it's a heck of a lot better than it was. And Nate had to take a break for a while from coming in, and he was seeing a different chiropractor. They drive about 50 minutes to come in each way, and for different reasons, they had to go see a different chiropractor. And finally, Nate asked his mom if he could come back and see Lazar, because he told her that he knew that's what he needed. So Nate came back, and he's doing well. Last week, Mom took him to the grocery store, stayed in the car, let him go in the grocery store with a list. And he had to get celery and milk, and I think he was allowed to get a treat. I don't remember what the other one was. But he went through the lane, had a little trouble doing the self-checkout, so called Mom on the phone, and she helped him on the phone do the self-checkout, and he was able to check out and get back out to the car all by himself. That is freaking awesome. I love that. I love that about Nate and his family. This is Tommy. In this picture, Tommy was 31. When he was born, he was growing and developing normally, however you would consider that, but Mom and Dad didn't notice any concerns. And then around 18 months old, I remember specifically this health history conversation. In around 18 months, completely stopped talking. Went totally nonverbal. And from 18 months to 31, didn't talk. A naturopathic physician sent him in here because he had heard I was doing some stuff with people on the autism spectrum. Tommy started getting adjusted, and about 6 weeks after his first adjustment, he walked up to the front desk here, and he looked at our team at the front desk and said, "I want a hot dog." Mom and Dad are like super organic, so they weren't thrilled that that's what he said. But from 18 months to 31 years, so 29 and a half years of not being verbal, and 6 weeks after we start unsticking the nervous system, things start to regulate. Did Tommy immediately go back to full conversations and no, And he still has deficits. There are things that can't fully heal, but he is doing so much better, which is awesome. This is Harper. She's also my buddy. She's really sweet. Same type of situation, pretty normal. Around the 18-month mark, stopped talking, started kind of flailing, screeching, toe walking. About her second or third week, Devin would know, Devin would remember this detail better than me, but early on in her care, started talking, and her first words were, "I love you, Daddy," which was super cool. So Harper is rocking it out. And then this is Nate. He came in when he was 10 or 12 years old. His parents asked me if chiropractic can help with autism. And I said, well, there's a strong neurological component with the autism spectrum, and so it's worth checking. But it has, but there are certain things we look for to know. So I'm happy to look, but it wasn't, yes, we can help with everything, right? So they came in. Nate wouldn't touch you, wouldn't let you touch him, wouldn't make eye contact with anybody. From here, he would sit on the floor backwards on his butt, and he would crab walk down the hall, 30 feet to suite number 3. And we used that one because it had the window in it. And I was able to get his x-rays. I was able to get him adjusted. And about 6 weeks later, mom and dad didn't say anything to anybody. And about 6 weeks later, his leader at church, not really youth at 10 or 12, but what the children's pastor or whatever, small group leader, asked what they were doing differently. Now, to this point, she had done the gluten-free, the casein-free, the sugar-free, the removed dyes, and she noticed some small changes, which is great. But about 6 weeks after getting the pressure off Nate's brainstem, that's when people at church started noticing and asking, hey, what is different? Something's different about Nate. He was able to enroll in karate, which is crazy because if you can't touch or be touched, he worked well with that. He started piano lessons. He was able to concentrate better on that. And Nate has been a patient ever since. He graduated from high school. He went to college in Iowa. And so when I would go back to Palmer to speak, I may have driven an hour north each time I was there to see him and get him adjusted, because for some reason he likes my adjustments and didn't want somebody else to adjust him. So Nate's an adult. He's working full time. Other than him being outrageously tall, you might call him maybe a little socially awkward, if you're going to have a conversation with him. But his diagnosis changed. And so within a year of him coming in, his diagnosis changed from Asperger's to nothing on the spectrum at all, which is really cool. It doesn't always work that way, but that's how it worked for Nate. His mom wrote a book, and I'm going to give those of you that are here tonight, I'm going to give you a copy of her book, and there's a section in there where she talked about Nate's experience coming in, and it's just really cool. I just think it's cool somebody wrote about it in her book, and so I think that's really neat. So here's the thing. What I love about that Nate's story is mom and dad had a really cool thought that I agree with. And they thought, Nate was the one that was diagnosed with Asperger's, but we've got another kid. And he doesn't have any diagnoses, but he does have a nervous system. And if Nate's nervous system getting tuned up helped him function this much better, why would we have the mindset that we only want to do something for this kid if there's something wrong with him? I love that mindset that they had, not that, right? I love that. And it's true. And so they brought Simon in as a kid. That's not Simon, different picture. But and then mom and dad started getting adjusted. And when Simon, he travels all over the world to work now. And whenever he's back in Ann Arbor, he always comes in and gets adjusted. And it's not because he's in pain. It's not because he had a headache. It's not because he didn't sleep well. It's not for the treatment of anything. It's because he knows that as long as I keep my nervous system tuned up, I can take on the world. And it's really, really cool. And so we love our families. We love families that come in here. And it's a family affair. These are two little ones. They're a couple years older now, but they would come up from Ohio. Grandma and grandpa would put them in the car, their son, their daughter, and their two granddaughters, and they would drive about 4.5 hours. They still come up every month or two, and they have for years. Now their dad's in the military, so we couldn't show their faces, but it really is a family affair. So if you're here and you have anybody you want to have checked, any kids, any adult, it doesn't matter. Here's the other thing. The age doesn't really matter. Like, I know this is about kids, and I know this is about autism spectrum and ADHD, but if those nerve scans we talked about, if there's anybody in your life that you want to have scanned, our assessment's $453. We love thanking people for coming to the workshop. So if you haven't had the nerve scans, or you have people in your life that haven't, we will offer that to them for the next 2 weeks. They can do that. We really believe that everybody needs to get checked. If you're watching online, we're offering you the same thing. I don't have a fancy QR code. I don't have a code for you to text. I don't have anything like, I just want you to just call the office, text the office, email the office. Feel Great Ann Arbor, that's our website. If you want to check it out, you find us, and anybody on my team in the next 2 weeks, if you say, I saw the autism workshop, the perfect storm, even if you didn't see it, if you just caught the tail end, if you want your nervous system checked, we want to do that. We want to put our money where our mouth is. I was a perfect storm kiddo. My oldest son was a perfect storm kiddo. My youngest son was a perfect storm kiddo. And I'm going to close with something my daughter asked me when she was 10 or 12. She wants to do this work, which I just love. I'm proud of all my kids. And I love that she loves this. I love that she wants to help people this way. But we were in Taekwondo, and she's thank God she's not on the spectrum. She doesn't have sensory issues, but you know, she has a nervous system, and we all have a nervous system, and we grow and develop. And as the twig is bent, so the tree grows. And so we always want to make sure that our kids are functioning well. And the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, right? But the next best time is today. And so we really, really, really want families to get their nervous systems checked, because we can help with so much when your body's just working the way it needs to work. And so Jaden and we were all in Taekwondo, and Jaden got kicked in the jaw, okay? And it was a big kick. I saw it happen, right? And so later that night, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her feet up on the chair and her knees up under her chin, and her chin resting on her knees. And she was just kind of sunken, right? Now, I don't know what the diagnosis code is for sunken, okay? And I don't know if insurance covers helping kids who are sunken. I don't know. I don't know what percentage insurance covers of that after your deductible is met and you got a pre-authorization letter and a referral from 14 other people that are disease care experts. You know, I don't know anything about that. But what I do know is Jaden did not have a single symptom that I could check off on a list. So when I asked Jaden, honey, does your head hurt? No. Oh, well, it was at our kitchen table, so I didn't have a list. But if I did, I couldn't check off headaches. Does your jaw hurt? No. It did, but it doesn't now. Oh, okay, well, I can't check that off. Are you throwing up? No. Well, shoot. Do you have diarrhea? No. Do you have memory loss? No. Are you sleeping? Like, can you not sleep? No, I can sleep. Now, ask yourself the question. No disrespect to anybody. You guys know my heart. No disrespect to anybody. what the heck is her pediatrician going to say when we show her that list? You're fine. There's nothing wrong with her. You want me to give you something? Like, is she down? Oh, yeah, I'd say she's down right now. She's kind of sunken. I mean, would you say she's clinically depressed? No, but dang it, she's just not her brightest self right now. What is that? I don't know what the diagnosis is for that. I don't know what the CPT code is for that. I don't know what insurance reimbursement is for that. I don't know what the pediatrician's going to say other than, I don't know what to tell you. And that's okay. Like, that's not the pediatrician's job, is to help my daughter not be sunken. Now, if she gets an infection, if she has a problem, a different story maybe, okay? But what do you do with that? And so I did what I know how to do. And I took Jaden and I measured her and I got her adjusted, because that's what I know how to do. And she didn't say a word to me. But as soon as she stood up, she just turned her head sideways. She was about this tall, and she just laid her head on my chest. And I just gave her a hug. No words needed to be said in this moment. And I just held her for a second, and then she looked up at me like this. I will never forget this as long as I live. She looked up at me like this and said, "Dad." And I said, "What, honey?" And she said, "Why do people live that way?" And I hope the answer is because we haven't told them yet. I hope that's all it is. So that's what I have. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great night. I'm going to stick around for questions, but if you don't have any, you're free to go. And I don't know if we can post. Can you post our phone number in the chat or something? Oh, did you? Cool. I don't even know how to do that. So anyway, there it is. Do we have any questions? Did anybody post any questions, Casey? Okay, perfect. So if you have any, you can throw them in the chat. Any questions here tonight? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. So the question is, how do you know the difference between ADHD or ADD in autism spectrum, and what do you do when the doctor says we need to do something, we need to change something? Or are they saying medication? Are they saying?
Well, they're saying because it's 2 years of discussion about
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the obvious is there. Why have you suffered academically and not really sit still? Like all of the symptoms, like are there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, like, help them because you don't want them to suffer. You're doing the diet, you're taking away sugar, you're not everything that's right in there, not to be there. You're trying everything in your power. How do you know the difference? That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The care that he's getting is definitely very different.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll tell you in a situation like that, what we would say is there are three things that would go. So ADHD, the inability to stay focused without proper stimulation and with a hyperactivity component is very different than autism spectrum. It's just that they both involve the nervous system. That's why they're in the same talk. So those are not, now, you know, kids, we can have more than one thing going on, but those are very different. And in my experience are very, I've never heard of them being confused with each other. What causes any lack of ease, if you will, would have, the origin would be coming from a physical issue, which is, we talked about this tonight with there being, you know, something stuck in the spine with the nervous system. There can be a chemical issue. So we talked about injections or gut issues and the body's not clearing things properly. And there also can be, and often are, emotional issues. Now, not emotional issues. I don't get into diagnosis. Like, we've known each other long enough. I don't really diagnose things. I don't call it things. I don't, you know, if somebody comes in with, and they say, my fibromyalgia is flaring up, I'll joke with them, kind of joking, and say, what did you say about your peanut butter and jelly? Like, I don't care what you call it. Now, that's not very Western medicine-ish, but I'm not Western medicine. And so what you call something very, very, very rarely affects how you fix it. It can affect how you treat it, for sure, but it very rarely affects how you fix it. So, for example, if something stinks in my home, I really don't care whether it's a rat, a mouse, a dead snake, or a piece of shrimp that got stuck under a cabinet. I really don't care what it is. I just want the cause of whatever I don't like to be addressed, right? So that said, if the physical is being addressed, then we've got to look at chemical and emotional. It really is that simple. I'm very familiar with your situation. And so my best recommendation is that there be an evaluation on the chemical side to see what can happen to, we're working on the brain-gut connection already. And there are good things happening. But if the gut needs repair, then that would be the most appropriate next step before chemically altering how the brain is functioning. In my family, you know, that's what I would say. That is a really long answer. So I would have Dr. Sarver do lab work on him, urinalysis, and see what kind of toxicities or deficiencies are present. Clear those out. I think you'll have a new kid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. What I'll tell you this too is this is true of leadership, faith, finances, health, relationships, anything. What got you here is not going to take you there. So if only getting him adjusted, fill in the blank, is what you've been doing, and you're not liking the results that you're seeing and you want more results, then something has to change. Now, on my side of the office, that could be visit frequency. That could be Beamer to stimulate blood flow to get oxygen to the brain. That's incredibly helpful. That could be Dr. Sarver checking for toxicities or deficiencies. That could be outside of the office, something like neurofeedback to retrain the synapses and the neural pathways in the brain. There is so much amazing stuff that can be done. It could be cutting sugar and flour and increasing exercise. I mean, there is so much that can be done, and you are nowhere near the end of your rope. I know as a mom, I'm not a mom, but I know that as moms sometimes feel, you might feel like you're at the end of your rope. You're absolutely not even close. You're just getting started. You know what I mean? There is no way. I mean, there are so many possibilities that haven't been exhausted, you know? So let's hope, man. We're dealing some hope. There's lots that can be done. So we'll chat, you know, we'll chat. Nobody can see you, so the world doesn't know I'm talking about Skoblachi Afrodicabutis, who lives at, I'm just kidding. Anyway, there was a meme, as soon as Trump got elected, you know, I'm going there now. It's late. And it said, I live in constant fear that Trump will deport my Latina mother-in-law who lives at 651 North Main Street, blue house, white shutters, gets off work at 6. Like, I was like, that's awesome. All right, any other questions? Let me see here. I'm on the stream here to see if there are, okay, and I'm looking on this. Anyway, well, here's the deal. If there are questions, you can email them. It's care@drlazar.com, drlazar.com. And let's see here, chat's there. Yeah, all right. Any other questions? All right, you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those of you that tuned in. I think you're awesome and we would love to help. Casey, thank you for running the tech side of things, and we're here for you. Thanks for joining.